with my computer. Okay.
Yeah, you have to unshare.
Okay, I'll do that. Stop sharing. Okay.
Okay, I'm
Abby, I
going to
think you're
start the
muted.
webinar. We're starting the webinar in 10 seconds.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to session 8 of the Nexus conference. Karangalan po naming mag-welcome sa inyo, which is it's our honor to welcome you back to the second part of our afternoon sessions here. I am Dr. Abby Nubla-Kung from City University of Seattle, and I will be your moderator for session 8, where we will hear about 5 studies surrounding the theme of resilience and social welfare. And our researchers here are based in Canada, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and India. So before we begin, some administrative reminders. Presenters, in the spirit of embracing the global nature of our conference, I ask that you greet everyone in the language of your birth country before you introduce yourself or selves. In the case of multiple presenters, you'll have 15 minutes to present. I will have a timer on my screen that you can see, and if needed, I'll do a verbal 3-minute kind of reminder for you. So, because we're going to be strict on time management here, we'll stop you once the time is up, but you have a little bit of a leeway, so it's not like we'll yank you off the screen. I'll have a timer again, as I said, and if you need any special assistance in terms of PowerPoint, etc., we've got Miss Choi here to help you. Just let us know. So at the end of all 5 presentations, we'll have a Q&A session, and if anyone has a question they'd like to ask of our presenters, please either raise your hand, and in the case of our attendees, you can type it into our Q&A. And don't forget to let us know who to address the question to. So without further ado, let's begin. Our first presenter is entitled Community Resilience in Prevention of Sexual Exploitation of Children and Youth. Dr. Mhina, please share your PowerPoint now. And while she's doing that, I'm just going to read one sentence from her abstract. The research question for this review is, what is the impact of community resilience on prevention of sexual exploitation for children and youth? Whenever you're ready, Doctor.
Asante, hamjambo, habari zenu, karibuni. My name is Dr. Christine Mhina, originally from Tanzania. I'm now a Canadian. I'm working with City University in Edmonton campus. Today, we'll talk about community resilience in prevention of sexual exploitation of children and youth. And for the outline, I will briefly try to look at what really is sexual exploitation and briefly on the impact of sexual exploitation. Then I'll move into the factors that contribute to the risk factors that contribute to vulnerability of children being exploited, and then why I'm interested in this question, and bring in the concept of community resilience and how that is connected what we think about preventing sexual exploitation. I will end up with some recommendations for future research. So, what is child sexual exploitation? Uh, Child exploitation refers to situations where youth under the age of 18 are forced or incited to exchange sexual acts or for material items or non-material items. So for material items, this refers to things like food, for shelter, for clothing, for electronics or phones or drugs. And for non-material items, is the exchange for protection, exchange for love, and exchange for belonging. Because this has been a persistent global issue. Statistics shows that about 5% of the world children and youth are being affected by this problem, and yet there is no universally accepted definition. When you look at the language that is being used in social media, it's quite different from the language that is used in academia. So, because of simplicity of what really is, I decided to follow the definition that has been provided by the Protection of Sexual Exploited Children Act here in Alberta, where we live. And this has been updated recently in 2023. And what they're emphasizing in their definition is the same that is used throughout the world, that it involves underage children, and then it also involves luring younger people via internet, social media for sexual purposes. It also involves selling or distributing child pornography. Child sexual exploitation can happen anywhere. It can happen at home. It can happen in public areas. It can happen in malls. And what is more heartbreaking is the fact that today we we claim that we're so advanced in technology that we can get whatever we want by just pressing a button. But when it comes to child sexual exploitation, perpetrators also, they're using that advancement in technology to exploit our children. It's so heartbreaking. It's disheartening that when you look at the prevalence and the statistics over the world, the trend is going on the right hand side. It's increasing, ever increasing, not decreasing. When you think about technology and development, you would think that we would have found ways of dealing with the issue. But the statistics goes there. When you look at the situation in Canada, I don't have the right numbers because statistics keep on changing. But what I found out in 2024, there are police reported incidents of just one particular form of sexual exploitation, online sexual exploitation, 160 incidents per every 100,000 Canadian children being affected by this. So we are talking about the population of 41 million people. And in every group of 100,000, 160 incidents are reported. This is what is reported. We all know that issues of child sexual exploitation go unreported. So that means the number is higher than 160 incidences that have been reported in police. When you look at the consequences, again, this is an area that it is devastating because we are talking about young children. We are talking about being exploited, being victimized. And when you look at the effects, both short-term and long-term effects, it's more devastating. This child sexual exploitation is connected to trauma. Yesterday, we had speakers who talked about trauma and talked about the effects of trauma in mental health. Likewise, the children who have sexual exploited have various ways and symptoms of mental health. psychological distress. They have a feeling of shame and guilt. They experience low self-esteem. They experience issues related to suicidal ideation. There is also a consequence on physical health and sexual health. Uh, Children who are sexually exploited, majority of them experience early pregnancies. Some of them do experience diseases, sexually transmitted infections. There are several incidences of risky compulsive behaviors. And also, their situation puts them in a position of consequences on relational, social, and economic consequences. For example, the loss of family ties, difficulties maintaining that closeness with the parents. And it doesn't happen only in family ties, it happens in schools. These children face problems when they go to school. They feel isolated, they are lonely, and they feel that the situation where they are at home, because of a number of reasons, because some of them, the problem itself starts at home. The situation is unbearable, and they decide to move, to go away from home. So, based on the literature, a number of authors have been writing on the effects and risk factors that contribute to the vulnerability since early 19th century. And majority of them show that the process starts at home, where the child is exposed to childhood abuse. It could be physical, but in many cases, child sexual abuse. And it involves people that the child knows, most of them. A few, it could be strangers, but statistics shows that that interaction happens with people that they know. It is involved with neglect at home. And so, because that situation, the child feels that the situation is unbearable, they feel that it's better to move away from home, not knowing where they're going, what they're going to what they're going to experience. And so they go into the community where they have a belonging and friendship and new ties with their friends, and they're being introduced in so many other things, like being involved in substance abuse, being involved in being difficulties with the justice system. The conflict with parents is ongoing. And that then, because of living with difficulties and because of financial constraints, they tend to go into some of them into commercial sexual exploitation.
Doctor, you have less than 5 minutes left.
Really?
Yes.
So, because of that, I was so interested to look at this issue, which is devastating. Is it really preventable? And in what ways the concept of the community resilience approach is relevant when we talk about prevention of sexual assault? So I looked at the literature on the concept of community resilience, and what I found is that again there isn't one definition that is used universally, but there are different interpretation. The first interpretation is the fact is looking at the factors within a community, whether it is at the geographical level or a community of practice where people are looking at the factors that can be used in the structures and processes to help build the individual resilience. So when you think about community resilience, the concept itself does not negate the importance of the agency or individual resilience. It's how that works within the community, looking at the factors and how those factors can be harnessed in the structures and the processes of that. The other way of interpreting community resilience is when you look at the responses after a disaster has happened. And so most of the literature talks about 3 minutes, talks about the disaster. So the response of the community after a disaster has happened. And so they're emphasizing the ability to maintain stable function after the disaster and ongoing processes of change. And they're emphasizing a collection of response related abilities of collective strength. How can we work together in order to solve the problem? And most common characteristics they talk about is the issue of leadership, the local knowledge, the learning, the values and beliefs that we just talked about and it was presented by previous speakers, the values and beliefs, the community infrastructure. How can this help in terms of building collective strength and deal with whatever issue that we're saving? So recent articles on community resilience emphasize that and saying that community resilience is important in ensuring that people's relations with others through strong connection and collective strength in preventing sexual exploitation of children and youth. And the emphasis too is on the significance of using sociological framework. So use sociological framework to understand the risk factors at all these levels, the individual level, family level, community level, and society level, but also looking at the protective factor in that sociological framework. How can we prevent sexual exploitation of children? What was also emphasized is this synergetic relationship in preventing sexual exploitation, collaborativeness. We have to work, we have to bring pooled resources in terms of knowledge, resources in terms of relationship, reciprocity, how all us inform each other as we are trying to deal in terms of preventing the sexual exploitation. One other thing that was emphasized in the literature is also about involving youth in this process of wanting to change. And not just any youth, but those who have experienced the issues related to sexual exploitation because of that experiential learning and experiential knowledge to be part of the solutions for the entire community. In conclusion, what I really want to say about this literature is that adopting community resilience approach has been shown that is important, and we have to develop a comprehensive understanding of protective factors at all levels. And it also shows the significance of interdisciplinarity in the sense that when you deal with sexual assault, you just don't deal with a specific discipline, maybe a psychologist or mental health practitioner or community developer, but bringing all those people who work on these areas to work together. But that is easily said that people can work together to solve the problem of sexual exploitation. What I'm thinking, and some of the authors in the literature also mentioned that future research really needs to focus on how can this be operationalized. We're talking about collaborative trust, but how can it happen? I just asked a question during the previous presentation that we come from very diverse backgrounds. We are different in terms of our thinking. We have different tacit knowledge. So we are informed differently in our behaviors, in our actions. How can we come together and work? So future research should do that. And also, there is an emphasis that to use the complex system theory to illuminate the complexity of the issue, not only the complexity of the issue, but also this idea of collaborative strategies, how we can work through. But I have hope and I do believe that indeed, collaboratively, we can work to prevent sexual exploitation.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much, Dr. Mihina. I thank you for ending on that hopeful note there. And so now our next presentation is by Dr. Kariwo, who is here to share um, a review of challenges faced by immigrant youths in Canada who have mental health problems when accessing services. Please begin when you're ready. Dr. Kariwo, I believe your mute button is on. And while we're waiting, I'm going to read from his abstract. This qualitative study explores the barriers and facilitators that influence immigrant youth engagement with mental health supports in Canada. It examines ways of increasing the resilience of this population. So, resilience, as you know, is the theme here. In this study, it's the resilience of immigrant youths. And in the previous presentation, it was using the resilience of communities to face a challenge.
Are you able to see my screen now?
I am able to see your screen, Dr. Kariwo, and I'm able to hear you.
Thank you so much. Yes, you have already read my title there. Moroi Magadi Mese. This is Shona from Zimbabwe. Greeting everyone, and I hope everything is going on well with you people. I'm enjoying the conference very, very much.
Dr. Carrillo, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your sound is a little bit staticky. Is there any way to fix that before we move forward?
Okay, I've unmuted myself here, so
Yes, we can hear you. It is true. It is a little bit staticky, though, meaning every time you speak, there's a background noise.
is there? How do we fix that now?
Is any other media on?
No.
Perhaps closing other media.
Are you using your microphone or are you using your laptop?
I'm using my laptop.
Okay. Do you see on the corner where it says audio and there's an up arrow? On your bottom left, it says audio next to video.
Let me see if I can. Okay.
Thankfully, we have built in time for technological difficulties. Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we work through this.
Can we hear the abstract?
I'm sorry.
Can we hear the abstract?
Yes, we can, absolutely, as we work through that. Canada. Oh, Dr. Carrillo, can you say something again? I feel like
I've got my microphone here. There was
it is
someone.
perfect now. It is perfect. No static. Can you please go ahead and share your screen?
Oh, okay.
So let me read as you're sharing. Canada is a destination and home for many immigrant youths. Despite that, the youths encounter multiple stressors that shape their mental health experiences, including acculturative stress, family role changes, and systemic discrimination. Yet, despite an evident need, their access to and utilization of mental health services remain disproportionately low. This qualitative study, based on a critical review of existing literature, explores the barriers and facilitators that influence immigrant youth's engagement with mental health supports in Canada. It examines ways of increasing the resilience of this population. Okay, and it goes on to theoretical frameworks, but I believe that we are almost ready to present here. So this is a systematic review of the literature that Dr. Carrillo has done in the topic of the resilience of immigrant youths, as we have presented here in the abstract.
I'm trying to share. I've got double screen here.
You're sharing, we can see it. We just need you to start the slideshow.
Yeah, it won't. It says resume slideshow, but it's not. It's not giving me slideshow. So that's another issue.
Okay, so maybe we can have we can have Mika Choi share that. Would you like that?
Yes, is the please stop the sharing right now?
Okay, so while that's so between Mika Choi,
Michael needs to unshare so that Mika can share.
right? Okay. So, synthesizing findings, this study underscores the importance of designing and delivering youth centered, culturally safe, and accessible mental health services. Dr. Carrillo, I believe your slideshow is up. Please present when you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me without an echo now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Moroi Magadi Mese, this is a greeting from Zimbabwe, Shona. I'm quite excited to share some of my work here that I've been conducting in terms of immigrant research. Next slide. So this is my presentation outline. We have an introduction and context, and then I do present a theoretical framework that I used for the study, and then I'll briefly go through some of the literature and critically analyze it, and then I'll present some findings and recommendations with a conclusion. Okay, next one. So the literature shows that in recent decades, Canada has become one of the most multicultural countries in the world, with immigration playing a central role in shaping its social and demographic landscape. I believe this is also for those who are around the globe. This is happening in most countries where immigrants are attracted to. There's kind of an influx. According to the 2021 census, there are about 1.2 million first-generation youths aged 15 to 24 living in Canada. Among new arrivals are thousands of immigrant youths who face the complex task of adapting to a new culture, language, and social environment, all during a critical stage of psychological and emotional development. So we see that while migration can open doors to opportunity and safety, because we know that migrants are really seeking they are seeking better lives in the country of destination. However, it can also introduce significant stressors that negatively affect mental health. Next slide. So, continuing on this trend, many immigrant youths in Canada experience elevated levels of anxiety. There's depression, trauma, identity-related challenges, yet they often struggle also to access mental health services that they need. So this is the dilemma. They come with these conditions that we have explained here, and then when they are here, they cannot really access support services for them. There are also structural barriers such as language difficulties. We also have cultural stigma. In another presentation, we were talking about shame, and I think this applies to this population as well. Lack of culturally competent care and systemic inequities in healthcare access contribute to this growing concern. Next, please. So there are many barriers that immigrant youths and refugees face when trying to access mental health services. And as I have explained, the barriers include language, culture, racism, discrimination, and other systemic barriers. And I'm guided in this study by a number of research questions. The main one is, what are the barriers which immigrant youths face when they are trying to access mental health services? And then a couple of sub-questions here. What are the strategies then that can be used to improve access? For me, this is the critical part. And then lastly, how can we build resilience for this population? Next slide. So I have a theoretical framework which is a combination of three perspectives, really. The first one is being acculturation theory, and the next one being social support theory, and finally resilience theory. And I'll show you how they all intersect. Social support theory explains how families' support comes from the family, friends, community, professionals, etc., etc. It posits that emotional and practical and informational support from others also improves coping and reduces stress and enhances mental and physical health. So we see these are key components of support. Family support. This can also come as material support as well as information support, and then also the emotional aspect of it. When you are in a family, you get love. If you are not in a good family, then you lose that love, and that emotional aspect can hit hard. So supportive relationships act as a buffer against psychological distress and promote resilience. Now, this idea of social support is actually an old idea coming from Emil Durkheim from around 1897. Next slide. In terms of the resilience theory, it explains how individuals, families, and communities adapt positively and recover when facing adversity, trauma, stress, or significant life challenges, rather than focusing on only on pathology or risk. Resilient theory highlights strengths, protective factors, and adaptive processes that support well-being, and this originates from the work of Norman Gamezi in the 1940s. Next, please. Then acculturation theory by Berry explains how individuals and groups adjust psychologically, socially, culturally when they come into continuous contact with a new or dominant culture. It examines the changes in identity, behaviors, values, and relationships that occur during cross-cultural interaction. If you go on to the next slide, there are four prongs from Barry here, some of which I don't agree with. He talks about integration, maintaining heritage, and adopting the host culture. And then he also talks about assimilation, adopting host culture and rejecting one's heritage. There's a kind of a conflict in there where you're asking people to reject their heritage in order to assimilate. And then separation, rejecting the host culture and maintaining heritage. Well, you can't actually reject the host culture because that's where you're immersing yourself. And then the last one is, as I'm not quite in agreement with that, rejecting both cultures. Then you have a vacuum once you do that. Next slide. So in the review of the literature, there's a lot of agreement on the barriers that affect immigrant youth accessing mental health. However, there are gaps. There are few studies that make specific recommendations on how to solve this problem going forward. Next slide. Thompson and others cite inadequacy of linguistically and culturally appropriate services. So that's one area that we need to work on, and they actually have a quotation here. Not being fluent in English or French can pose challenges to gaining access to mental health services. They also observed a lack of knowledge on available services. In my research, actually, I find a lot of available services in Alberta as well as Canada-wide. So that is not really an issue, but it's a question of how those services can be accessed by immigrants. Tooley and others observed that different types of support are crucial in mitigating the challenges faced by youth when accessing mental health services, and these include financial and other material support as well as emotional support, which I referred to earlier in social support theory. Next slide. And then the list of barriers is long and includes all those that I've already mentioned, so we can move on to the next slide. And also, Finnegan here stated that challenges due to discrimination in host country are most powerful determinants of mental health. Discrimination, racism, big issues indeed. Decreasing public support for migration, mental health programs, services, and professionals views might unintentionally or intentionally actually perpetuate this problem. Let's move on. The interesting thing is there's a shift and focus now on resilience by organizations working with immigrants and refugees to Canada. And Yin and others here reported that immigrants and refugee integration services agencies in Canada were now incorporating resilience in their work. I think the resilience framework is a theme that has really been coming through in this particular conference, and I'm happy to see that it's also coming being adopted even in the service providers here for mental health. There are many programs in the provinces nationally which are to support by immigrant youth with mental health problems, but the information is not easily accessible. Let's move on. I have an example here of the Newcomer Center, therapeutic services, which provides culturally appropriate counseling services, social work support, wraparound support for immigrants and refugees. But I tried this service myself. Navigating the application process was quite something else. It requires language and other English language and other skills. Let's move on. Brown and others also reported that public services which subsidized by Texas include hospital-based mental health, school-based mental health. So there are some different levels here. The one that the public one, the private ones, where they charge a fee. So if you don't have the money, that's also a barrier. And then non-immigrants often access services more readily compared to immigrants. Move on. And then conclusion and recommendations here. So there's evidence pointing to further research to support immigrant youth who have mental health and needing access to services. And as I said, a focus on resilience and self-esteem would assist in filling a gap in the literature. The policy level should be leveraged because there are financial implications in programming and service provision. And there's also a need for culturally relevant services. Is there another one? Increase in targeting funding. Funding is always a big issue wherever there's a problem, and we need to ensure that governments are involved because they have the purse. And then to mandate culturally competence training for all service providers. In one of the studies, actually, they found that some of the service providers mentioned that they didn't even care. I was actually surprised to read the fact that they didn't even care about cultural competence. And then I have here the use of schools as support for these young people. Is there another one? So in conclusion, focusing on strengths and resilience instead of on weaknesses and psychological symptoms among immigrant youth has significant implications for policy and practice. I think that would be the last one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carrillo. A little bit under 1 minute ahead of time. So thank you so much. So we're gonna now pivot a little bit and invite Dr. Apologies, Sana Naz to present now. The presentation is entitled Curated Loneliness, the Paradox of Digital Validation and Social Withdrawal in Hyper-Connected Societies. And I see your presentation is up. Please start your PowerPoint slides. And I will read through. Objectives of this study aim to map and synthesize existing studies on digital validation, loneliness, and social withdrawal, highlighting how these dynamics reshape trust, emotions, and social norms, frame curated loneliness as a concept that explains the drift towards machine-centric cultures where digital acceptance often clashes with real-world expectations, thereby influencing resilience and social behavior. So Sana, whenever you're ready.
Is it visible?
It
Can you
is
see my
visible, and if you could please start your slideshow.
Okay, there is some problem at my end. Let me just see.
Okay, well, let me know and we will.
Okay,
You
is this
go ahead.
visible now?
Perfect. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. गुड मॉर्निंग अस्सलाम वालेकुम आई एम सना नाज मेरा नाम सना नाज है और मैं पाकिस्तान से हूँ इस वक्त मैं श्रीलंका में मौजूद हूँ लेट मी जस्ट ट्रांसलेट इनटू इंग्लिश टू सो दैट अदर पीपल आल्सो अंडरस्टैंड आई सेड greetings in my language native language which is Urdu and I am from Pakistan but currently residing in Sri Lanka. So before I just start, let me just give you a brief about this topic quickly so that I can save some time. As we all know, we live in a time where almost every moment can be posted, liked, shared, or saved. We all call it connection, we call it community, but behind these bright screens, quite a story is unfolding. Think of someone scrolling late at night. They are surrounded by hundreds of friends but still feel unseen. They post a photo, hoping it all will find attention. A few likes appear, then stop. And the silence starts to hurt in a way that's hard to explain. Not because the person is truly alone, but because the digital world they invest in isn't responding. This is what I call curated loneliness. A loneliness we don't just experience, but often create. We shape our online presence very carefully. We filter our emotion, we perform our happiness, but the more polished our digital selves become, the more distant we feel from our real ones. So there is the second construct of my paper comes up, which is the digital validation, which plays a very strange and weird role here. We can say a like on your post feels like acceptance, a comment feels like recognition, and a share feels like belonging. But when these signals become emotional anchors, something fragile forms inside us. So here's the real question comes inside. How many of us have ever deleted a post because it didn't get the engagement we expected? I think we all did. So the concept behind this curated loneliness and the paradox of digital validation and social withdrawal in hyperconnected society. As you can see, with the same perspective, the American Psychological Association recent report 2023, which says the trend revealing the 62% of individuals report feeling lonelier after extensive social media use, even as their online network expand. So this raises a central question: how do curated loneliness, digital validation, and social withdrawal manifest in existing literature, and what do they reveal about the growing divide between online identity and offline resilience, which is the main concept of my paper. So with that, we are having three main objectives for this systematic review. The first one is the question is what is the scope, scale, and characteristics of existing studies on curated loneliness and digital validation? And the objectives are: the first one is synthesizing and mapping the literature. The second one is analyzing behavior reshaping. And the third one is to find out the theoretical conceptualization. Here you are seeing the theoretical conceptualization, which says, which says a social comparison theory, which explain upward comparisons and negative self-image. Media richness theory, which says digital spaces lack emotional cues. Uses and gratification theory, why people stay online seeking belonging or belongingness. Client behavior, how online habits shape offline norms, like people usually withdraw. Offline withdrawal, we name it in psychology. So on your right side, you can see the psychological mechanism, which comes up like the social comparison, negative self-image, weak emotional cues, and excessive online engagement and emotional isolation. In connection with that, what behavior an individual withhold? Definitely the reduced emotional connectivity, social anxiety, and curated loneliness. Again, the central point is curated loneliness, and the age, culture, digital literacy, emotional regulation plays as a moderator. And the social behavior consequences would be social avoidance, trust deficit, non-compliance with social norms, and reduced resilience. So this is the scoping review process, which follows by these steps. I will quickly go through with this because of the time. The study design, we have followed the scoping review following the PRISMA framework. And the question we formed following the PCC, population concept context. Population means the individual engaging in digital online social interaction. Concept means curated loneliness, digital validation, social withdrawal, and the context, digital platform and contemporary social media culture. So we have done digital databases search across Science Direct, PubMed, Scopus, and PsycInfo 2015 to 2025. And the screening has been conducted by two reviewers, independent reviewers, and the following two steps. And as an outcome, we have included 35 studies. We have also followed for the quality appraiser JBI to Joanna Briggs Institution form. This is a PRISMA framework which we have followed. And these are the results. As you can see, the mostly studies we have included, total 35 studies we have included, and mostly literature we have included from 2025. And this is the connectivity and encapsulating the landscape of 35 study on your right side of the image. So in the conclusion, after synthesizing the 35 studies, the result comes up in two themes. We have developed two themes. The first one is algorithmic mediation and trust. The first one is methodological fragmentation. It shows a significant fragmentation. Studies define loneliness differently. Some use single item question, other use established scale like UCLA or Dijon, which is generically using for the loneliness measurement. Mostly studies which we have included showed a cross-sectional studies. So we still don't see how curated loneliness develops across time. I mean, there is a huge scarcity of longitudinal studies, what I mean to say here. Digital validation, withdrawal, and trust are rarely examined together. Cultural diversity is also very limited because mostly data we have included and found across databases were Western centric. So the cultural diversity was really very minimal over there. So the field is growing, but it is conceptually scattered because there are not as very limited studies. I wouldn't say not very limited studies which have been gathered all these phenomena and construct together. And the second theme is algorithmic mediation, socio-digital dynamics, trust. Under this theme, what we try to say is how algorithms, I mean the digital algorithms shape behavior and trust. Algorithms control what we see and reward emotional reactions, as we all know, that keep us engaged. This leads to distorted social realities. As for instance, young people especially develop fragile trust because digital validation becomes their main source of reassurance. This is where curated loneliness emerges. People receive constant validation online, but struggle to trust in-person relationship. This is what that is the term we used in our paper as a social withdrawal or offline discrepancy. They withdraw when they have to interact in real life, become anxious when validation slows because all the time in real life you cannot get the validation. We still don't know if this sport leads to genuine resilience or not. So the question arises here, how many of us or you have seen someone typing a long message, then delete it because it doesn't fit their online image? I think we all do most of the time in our life. So together, the findings show curated loneliness is shaped by both human psychology and digital architecture. So these are the discussions point. You can see the research landscape, methodological gap is there, as I already have mentioned. Mostly studies are cross-sectional. The absence of longitudinal and experimental designs limit insights into causality and temporal dynamic. And the lived experiences, qualitative research highlights the lived experiences, curated loneliness, revealing the conflict between persistent online presence and increasing offline solution. Algorithmic influence, social media algorithms, and digital validation profoundly impact social trust, loneliness perception, and offline behavior. And here comes another important factor, AI and loneliness. As we all know, AI is emerging. So during this synthesis, we have come across a few apps which have been piloted and at full scale, they have been implemented in Singapore and other part of the world as well, specifically in Germany and in America and Canada as well. A few apps names like Traplica, like Vesa, they all are trying to minimize the digital loneliness, and people are getting benefited with them. But mostly data which we get is self-reported. So you cannot just generalize the results to another culture or another population. The key research gap is cultural diversity and measurement consistency being critical research gaps, limiting global application of findings. So these are the limitations separately we have reported here, which already I have mentioned. And these are the conclusion. And we forward. So the conclusion I must, as you can read in the middle of the text, it connects us instantly but builds emotional distance. Algorithms reinforce curated behavior and reshape trust. Loneliness is not just emotional, it's socio-technical. It's shaped by design, culture, and emerging AI system. Research and intervention that builds digital resilience and curated loneliness lies at the intersection of psychology, technology, and society. Understanding it is essential if we want to hear more emotionally resilient, grounded digital future. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Sana. There were a few moments in there at the final.
I think I have finished so early,
So
2 minutes
the
late.
final thing, you were skipping a little bit in your presentation, but I believe you were reading the slides, and I was reading along with you, so I didn't stop you. But thank you so much for jumping in earlier than expected, and
I can go back during the.
we will question you about all of those conclusions. No worries. Okay, so our fourth presentation, supposed to
Sure,
be the
sure, ma'am.
final, but maybe not, is titled "Mapping Feminist Resilience Through Space: The City, Gender, and Cinematic Agency in Persepolis and Lipstick Under My Burqa." So, Dr. Sood or Sood, please share your PowerPoint now.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry for being a little late. Actually, it is quite early here in the morning.
Well, thank you for being here. You are not late in terms of when you need to present. I'm going
Thank
to
you so
read a
much.
little bit of your abstract as you share your PowerPoint with us,
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
unless you could, if you want us to share your PowerPoint. But in any case, so by reading cinematic space as a cultural discourse, this paper contends that feminist resilience materializes through spatial reinscription. Women's movements, desires, and narratives rewrite the city as an affective and political geography of freedom. Through their divergent aesthetic vocabularies, animation, and realism, Persepolis and Lipstick Under My Burqa demonstrate how contemporary feminist cinema transforms confinement into creativity and spatial marginality into narrative power. So, and I see that you're still sharing your slide here. Yeah, and so.
Ma'am, is my screen visible now?
Yes, it is. And if you want to just start your slideshow,
Sure, ma'am.
of course. There you go. And as you're doing that, there it is. Okay. We had a little bit of radio silence there, but that is okay. So whenever you're ready, please.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Gaurav Sood from India. Currently, I'm an assistant professor at the Department of English. So, without any delay, let me just begin with my presentation. The title, as you can see on the screen, is Mapping Feminist Resilience Through Space, City, Gender, and the Cinematic Agency in the two films that I have taken, Persepolis and Lipstick Under My Burqa. So my presentation primarily examines two films, Marjane Satrapi's Persepolis and Alankrita Srivastav's Lipstick Under My Burqa from India, which represents female resilience as a spatial practice. Rather than viewing resilience as an internal psychological trait, both films locate it in women's encounter with space, the home, the street, the corridor, the bathroom, the marketplace, and even the national border. Drawing on feminist spatial theory, I read these films as cinematic experiments in the world making. They show us cities, homes, intimate interiors are not mainly backdrops, but active forces that organize gendered agency through different cinematic languages, expressive animation, this film Persepolis and Srivastava's Lipstick Under My Bulka transforms space into a site where resilience becomes visible, negotiated, and redefined. My focus today is on how women reclaim movement, visibility, and desire through everyday spatial practices, how they inhabit the same space differently, and in doing so, quietly rewrite the environments that seek to contain them. So this is the first film, Persepolis, and this is the second slide of the film, Lipstick Under My Burqa. So now let me just give a brief introduction to these two films. So the first film, Persepolis, is an autobiographical animated film and a graphic memoir. It follows the life of Marji through revolutionary Iran, wartime Tehran, and later exile in Vienna. The film's black and white animation turns space into metaphor. Tehran appears heavy and angular, filled with surveillance and wartime fear. Vienna, the second city in the film, appears cold, fragmented, emotionally distant, and space mirrors her emotional and political displacement. Home, street, school, borders all become terrain of negotiation. The second film, Lipstick Under My Burqa, is set in Bhopal, which is in India. This film weaves together the lives of four women, four characters: Usha, Shireen, Rehana, and Leela. Instead of borders, exiles, here we have urban density. This film captures everyday Indian urban spaces that are saturated with surveillance, moral expectations, and gendered restrictions. Despite differences in geography and medium, both films portray space as alive with power, resilience, as something forged through spatial negotiation. Now, the core argument in the film of my paper at this point of the presentation is that I would like to establish the central argument that links both films. Instead of treating resilience as an inner psychological trait, Persepolis and Lipstick Under My Burqa invite us to understand resilience as something that takes form in space, in how women inhabit their surroundings, how they move through the restrictive environments, and how they tactically rework the geographies that attempt to confine them. Both films make it clear that space is not a neutral backdrop. Cities, homes, staircases, and even bathrooms function as ideological terrains that shape women's possibilities, how they appear, what they can say, and where their desires may or may not circulate. Resilience develops not in opposition to space, but through ability to inhabit these spaces differently, to read them, interpret them, and subtly bend them. In Persepolis, animation becomes a tool for unsettling authoritarian spaces because drawn space can shift, distort, and absorb emotion. Satrapi turns Tehran architecture into a field that Marji can imaginatively contest. Now, since this film and the novel is also graphically presented, the illustrated form can bend reality, exaggerate mood, and visually embody emotion. Satrapi transforms rigid Iranian structures into expressive, shifting symbolic space that Marji can resist. Marji is the lead character. Reinterpret or reshape. Animation becomes a political tool, redrawing oppressive environments. Now, this is a slide uh, which is a part of one of the instances and an example in the film. So here in Persepolis, you can see that reinterpreting space. And there is this instance of young Margie going out during this time, and she is being morally counseled by the guardians. So let me just tell you about this exact picture. So the specific scene from Persepolis here, where Margie is stopped by the guardians of revolution for wearing what they call punk shoes, offers one of the most precise illustrations of how gendered spatial regulation operates in the film. The encounter takes place in an open street, but the street functions less as a public space and more as a disciplinary corridor, where women bodies are constantly inspected for signs of ideological deviation. What's striking here is the arbitrariness of the accusation. Margie's sneakers are instantly coded as punk, a label that the enforcer herself doesn't understand but nevertheless policies with conviction. The ideological content of the accusation is hollow, yet it wields real spatial power. This moment shows how authoritarian systems weaponize ignorance, even without understanding the cultural meaning of the shoes. The moral guardian uses them as justification to restrict Margie's mobility. Now, Margie's expression, as you can see in the image, is wide-eyed, questioning, unafraid to talk back. Signals a refusal to internalize the absurd rules that attempt to regulate her. Her simple reply, "But these are sneakers," is an act of everyday defiance and insistence on naming the world truthfully, even as authority seeks to rename it coercively. Satrapi uses the brief moment to show how women develop a kind of micro resilient literacy, an awareness of how to inhabit even space when that space is hostile. Margie learns that survival in such environments requires not only physical movement but interpretive agility, recognizing when spaces are safe, when they tighten, and when one must navigate them with caution or wit. Thus, the scene becomes a bridge between repression and resilience. It demonstrates that even under ideological scrutiny, Margie maintains a sense of humor, logic, and resistance. Quite gestures that prepare her for the larger spatial struggle she will face on Vienna and beyond. Now, the next film, Lipstick Under My Burqa, as we can see on the screen, reimagines Bhopal's domestic interiors not as spaces of confinements alone, but as sites of quiet rebellion. Unlike Persepolis, where the city transforms dramatically across borders, Lipstick stays within the narrow apartments, alleyways, rooftops of Hawaii Manzil, and a building, a name of building. Yet within this limited geography, four women craft astonishing forms of resilience. Their rebellions are subtle, intimate, almost imperceptible to the outside world, yet cumulatively powerful. Srivastav imagines Bhopal's interior as dense, effective environments where women carve out micro territories of agency. The domestic spaces of Lipstick Under My Burqa, bathrooms, stairwells, narrow corridors, rooftops are not passive settings, but emotional architectures that shape desire, fear, secrecy, and expression. Now, there are four main characters in the film. First is Usha Buaji, who Usha Buaji's bathroom becomes one of the film's most radical spaces. A cramped room, typically associated with routine domesticity, turns into sanctuary when she reads erotica and rekindles a desire long policed by age, community, propriety. The second character is a young college girl named Rihanna, and her act of self expression unfolds in moments of liminality, changing jeans in washroom, slipping into Western clothes, and dancing when no one is watching. Third character, Leela, uh, for Leela, her rooftop autonomy meetings with her lover elevate her film's spatial politics literally. Above the watchful eyes of neighbors and family members, she negotiates autonomy in a space open to sky. And Shireen, the fourth character, for her economic resistance, Shireen's act of resistance is becoming economically sound for herself. Now, what this for women is not spectacle but subtlety. Srivastava turns small gestures, reading, dancing, selling, loving into acts of resistance. Now, this is one of the promotional pictures of the film, and these are the main four characters. Now, moving on to the comparative analysis of the film, of these two films. So, when we compare Persepolis and Lipstick Under Burqa, both films show that women do not simply live in cities, the cities live through them. Each urban landscape becomes a disciplinary framework, shaping that women can do, how they can appear, and what identities they are permitted to inhabit. Yet each film also shows that women subtly remake these urban scripts through everyday acts, through gestures, choices, and spatial improvisations that accumulate into resilience. Now, in this context, Judith Butler mentions that gender is an identity tenuously constituted in time, instituted in an exterior space through a stylized repetition of facts. Here, she reminds us that gender is not a stable truth rooted inside the body. It is a performance one
Three
continually
minutes,
shapes
doctor.
through the spaces we occupy and the actions we repeat. These acts of how we dress, speak, move, hide, or reveal are stylized because they follow cultural scripts. But because they must be repeated, they can also be repeated differently. Now, moving on towards the conclusion, I would like to mention that in bringing these two films together, Persepolis and Lipstick Under My Burqa, invite us to rethink resilience, not as a silent endurance, but as a form of feminist world making. Each film refuses the narrow understanding of resilience as the ability to withstand harm. Instead, resilience becomes a creative space, a creative practice, an active reconfiguration of the spaces that seek to discipline women. Across both cinematic landscapes, resilience is embodied, imaginative, and profoundly political. These women do not survive patriarchal spaces by withdrawing from them. They persist by transforming those very spaces into terrains of self assertion, whether through humor, drawing, secrecy, desire, or movement. They cultivate small but potent openings, effective corridors through which new versions of themselves can emerge. In Persepolis, resilience surfaces through aesthetic authorship. In Lipstick, the women's resilience unfolds as a form of urban negotiation. However, cinema becomes a feminist tool of reclamation. In this sense, resilience becomes a mode of imagining freedom, not a distant escape, but as something enacted in the very heart of constraint. Through these films, women reclaim space, reclaim narrative, and most importantly, reclaim themselves. Thank you so much. This would be the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Sood, for that comparative analysis of the two films. And now, if our audience members have questions, and I see Dr. Linder has her hand up. Dr. Linder,
Thank you
please ask
so
your
much, Dr.
question.
Nublikun. I was, just in case anyone doubts it, I was that child who sat always in the front row of every class, from grade school all the way through to university. That's why my hand goes up so quickly. I have questions for everyone, but what I'm going to do, rather than like keep all the time, is I'll ask one question and I'll get back in the queue. Make sure that everybody has a turn. Dr. Sood, thank you. That is a wonderful presentation. I so appreciated it. I was particularly struck by this idea of micro territories of agency. Wonderful idea. And I wanted you, I wanted to hear whether, from your perspective, does that concept only apply in gendered contexts? Is it only women who must and do carve out micro territories of agency? Or is that a concept that can be applied generally to the marginalized? I was thinking of the other presenters in this session, and it seemed to me that that idea might resonate across everybody's talks, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on, is it only for women, or is it for any group that is marginalized, this idea of micro territories of agency? Dr. Sood, your microphone is on mute.
I'm so sorry, Jackie. I'm so sorry. I thought this question is directed to some other person. I couldn't hear my name earlier.
Oh, yes, it was for you. Because
Oh,
you said
thank you
this in
so
your
much.
presentation. You
Thank
talked
you so
about
much.
micro territories of agency.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So, in my presentation, I did speak about this word micro territories of agency, where uh, primarily my thrust was on women and their acts of resistance that they have represented through these films. For instance, in a film like Lipstick Under My Burqa, micro territory of agency would be reclaiming her own space. For instance, there are some patriarchal structures which have been represented in the film, which try to morally ground women through certain acts of every day. For instance, wearing clothes, speaking, or how they react at home. It has all been controlled by the structures of patriarchy. So here, the micro territory of agency could just be wearing or reacting to the normal days or to their normal routine days of just reacting to wearing a small jeans or pertaining to how they can economically independent themselves outside the homes. Now, Jackie, the second part of your question is that can this be applied also to the migrants, if I'm
No,
not
my
mistaken?
question is patriarchy doesn't just control women, it controls
Okay.
everybody. So,
Right.
can this concept be applied to different populations besides women? Populations, for example, queer populations, populations that don't fit in with the mainstream patriarchal view of what is normal.
That's a great way to think about this. I haven't thought about this actually. Uh, to the other marginalized population, I think, Jackie, the patriarchal structure should operate over there as well, because patriarchy does not control the systems, but also uh, those marginalized people, for instance, gendered men or transgenders, who
Yeah.
are also controlled by the system of patriarchy.
Uh-huh.
So for instance, if you see how the society functions, rules are applicable equally to all of them. But then there are certain spaces within the society where you can react, uh, uh, you can say openly, or you can react in a very censored manner. So I believe,
Hmm.
I think so. Thank you for this food for thought, Jackie. I'll really think about it, and uh, I'll surely work on this aspect of patriarchy as well. But I think
Okay.
it should majorly impact all the system which is present in the society. Thank you so
Thank you
much for the
so
question.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie and Dr. Sud. Dr. Domingo, you had your hand raised for a question.
Yes, thank you so much. And my question is specific to Sana. Naz, thank you for
Yes.
your presentation. Having myself last week been a attendee at a conference on digital AI and just the loss of community, your topic resonated with me. And so my question is, in your presentation, you mentioned that there are two components, two dimensions, if you will, in this equation of human psychology and in the digital architecture. So, to what extent are the maybe platforms or the creators of digital content that help connection but also foster, ultimately loneliness, to what extent are they responsible for building safeguards or guardrails to recognize that, hey, there are some things that people are getting more addicted and we may be more connected or less connected, but we want more clicks, let's say. Um, what can we do to help encourage that more balanced conversation to build these guardrails into the systems that are created digitally?
Yeah, that's quite an interesting question. Thank you so very much for asking. Actually, I had been working on AI for over the last year now, and I'm trying to, uh, you may say, investigate what psychological impact this rapid integration of AI is going to leave on humankind, which is my PhD thesis on that. So I can speak definitely on this for another an hour, you may call. Actually, this loneliness and digital validation, it closely mediated by with the algorithms. For instance, if I put in a simple word for you, you must be using any social media for, say, like Instagram. So if you watch one video, definitely your algorithm, even if you see or watch accidentally, your algorithm reset in the same certain way. It doesn't understand your language. It only understand what you already have seen. So the algorithm definitely tells you the next feed is the same as you have seen the first complete video. So this is the machine mediated interactions which definitely don't have brains like human has. For instance, if a teenager who is underage and he has watched certain amount of content online, It was accidental. He was not supposed to watch that certain content, but machine doesn't understand this thing. They want to just repeat that algorithm because they have settled technically. They don't have any. I'm 200% sure because I have been advocating this thing. I'm a behavioral psychologist, so I know how much critical this topic is. When policymakers design or make any policy, they don't engage any psychologists or behavioral scientists into that. They make it technically. They don't make it, they are making for the human. They are making those developing those machines for the humans, but they don't engage those representatives which understand the mind and behavior technology and the mechanism. So yes, the co-designing is the main concept here. Whenever you are talking about any human computer interaction, HCI domain, you need to create such nexus, which you already have conducted, which is amazing. Interdisciplinary research is a big lag. We have conducted this scoping review and we have found there is only 3 longitudinal studies we have found, because when you use certain things, your behavior change over the time of period. You are not the same person as you were 3 years ago. So that is something which is missing in the literature, which is the scoping review is mainly conducted for. So we have just like seen the curated loneliness, the digital validation, the offline withdrawal, the trust deficiency, and there is a discrepancy in psychology. Normally, when you have to just label certain behavior maladaptive, what you say, there is a big difference between your real self and your imaginary self. So the imaginary self difference is huge nowadays. But the problem and dilemma is they don't study as under a single umbrella, because the main challenge which I have faced during conducting this scoping review is every single construct was studied separately. There was a very, very rare study, I mean, one or two, I may say, or saber side, which were just like integrating all these concepts, the withdrawal, the social withdrawal, and how person behave offline. Definitely, if you are getting validation online, you need that dopamine hit all the time. It's a human psychology. You conditioned your body, your mind, your brain, you're signaling them. You're signaling your brain, your mind, you need that dopamine hit. But in real life, you never ever get all the time the approval, the acceptance. You definitely get rejected. So these phenomena definitely is a it's a very diverse, it's a very widespread project, topic, discipline, which because my topic PhD, which always just like get criticized, I'm studying cyber psychology, organizational behavior, and AI, human computer interaction. So it took me 1 year to just get approved with a main proposal.
We all
Why
know
I'm
that
doing a lot of
process.
studies. Yeah,
Svana, thank
exactly.
you. Thank you for your answer.
No,
Thank you so
thank
As
much
you.
you
And
for
said, you can
introducing
keep
firsthand.
working, you
Yeah,
can keep talking about this for
yeah,
a whole
thank you.
hour.
And
thank you
perhaps
so
there
very
is
much for
an
giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
perhaps there's a need for a chief psychology officer that is just
Yeah,
as important as the chief technology
my
officer.
my service is there, always there.
Right. Okay, let's move on. And we've got Dr. Demeke who has a question here.
Thank you so much for really wonderful presentations all around. Um, my question is to Dr. Mehina. Have you, it's just your description and your tone is very powerful, and on an issue that is the most heinous crime, not only legal crime but also moral crime. The exploitation of minors in a sexual manner is horrible. I was just curious if you have found that if there are certain demographics that are more vulnerable than others in terms of sexual exploitation, and also if the proliferation of media these days, the internet has made exacerbated this terrible situation. You realize that I may be asking you something outside the scope of your presentation, but I just thought if you had any ideas about the demographics that are more vulnerable and the how if media has exacerbated it.
Yeah, what I would say is that, in fact, media has helped in terms of understanding the impact in different demographics. Earlier on, when you read literature was showing that the statistics are more in marginalized communities, communities that live in poverty, but it's now becoming clear that sexual exploitation happens all over across the world in all demographics, in all genders. It's whether it's female or male or transgender, all over. It can happen anywhere. And so while social media, in a way, exacerbated the possibilities of exploiting, but it helps in terms of enhancing the awareness of the problem and also bringing about the need to be conscious, to develop that critical consciousness of the situation at all levels. It's not just at the level of a family or level of the community, it's all around us. And the importance of understanding the surrounding environment. And that's why when I had this question whether community resilience is relevant in terms of thinking about the prevention, I thought, let me see what the literature says. And in different parts of the world, they look at community resilience and mostly how community resilience works in terms of responding to disasters. But community resilience is not just about disasters, it's about anything that damages and destroys the community. And sexual exploitation does exactly that. And therefore, it's the community because it starts at home, it starts around the people that we know. So, the community awareness and consciousness and developing a need to deal with the issue is very important. I don't know whether I answered your question.
You did. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna jump the queue a little bit. I did raise my hand and then I put it down. But since I'm moderator, Jackie, I am going before you.
Oh, well.
This question is for Dr. Carrillo. I love that you did this review of the literature as you were asking your question about immigrant youth and their access to mental health services. And I love that you actually went through the process yourself, right? And kind of found out, like, okay, how hard is it to actually do this? If I, as an educated person with many resources, am trying to access it in place of them. My question to you was, given that experience of yours, how would you operationalize sort of the next steps of expanding that access or making it a lot easier for the population that you were studying?
Thank you. That's a very good question. I think the problem is when you are doing research and it's qualitative research, it doesn't really convince the politicians. That's what I've discovered. So in going forward, what I'll probably try and do is have a quantitative piece added to it. Because if you say to the politicians, in Edmonton, I had a survey of 500 youths, and this is what is coming up, they are more likely to listen to you than to say, oh, I interviewed 5 participants. And they have got some heart-rending stories. You can see what's happening right now, even with the bargaining that's going on with the unions. The governments are very difficult to penetrate. Yeah, so that's one thing. I think from the research angle, one would need a bigger, sample to throw around. And then the other component is actually advocacy. I think we really need a powerful way of advocating for these youths, whether it's going to community organizations, policy levels, but lobbying and advocacy, I think will be the next thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that numbers thing. And Dr. Daphne in the last session was talking exactly about that, policy doesn't really move without the numbers. And so that's why they did the study that they did in a way, in the methodology that they did it in. So thank you for your answer there. Dr. Linder, I'm going to go to you. And then there is a question for Dr. Sood in the chat that I will read after you ask your question.
Why don't we go to the chat first because we haven't
Okay.
heard from the chat, and then I'll go after.
Sure. Okay. This is from Nandy Moonflower. So for Dr. Sood, do you think liminal theory illuminates the process by which in between spaces such as urban rooftops, hidden interiors, or exile not only shelter acts of resistance, but actively catalyze new forms of identity, construction, and world making in the films that you had reviewed? And there is a sub question: are there ways these micro territories become sources of creative agency rather than mere refuges? So Dr. Sood, it's written down for you. It's a very, Nandy,
Thank,
it's a very sophisticated question. I love it, but I love that it's written down because it's
thank you so
dense.
much. Quite a long question, and there are two or three questions within just one question. Just let me try and answer. Thank you for the question first. Uh, do you think liminal theory eliminates? Yes, I believe that liminal theory is extremely useful for understanding how in between spaces in the films that I've used, such as rooftops, interiors, exiles, even moments of pause, operate in these films. For instance, in classical theory of liminality by Victor Turner, the limited zone, sometimes it is neither inside nor outside. It can sometimes be the threshold where identities sometimes loosens, norms are suspended, and all those things. So at times, the second question into this is urban rooftops, hidden interiors, no exile. I believe that these are at times certain laboratories, or you can say certain spaces of becoming. And this also becomes valuable when certain precarious spaces are carved out under oppressive environments. So these spaces, they are not only merely for refuges, but also as passive escapes. And sometimes they are generative and they can catalyze new identity making, creativity, at times relationability. So if we think about liminality, uh, and what Jackie had earlier mentioned, micro-territoriality, Uh, I think together they can make an agency which emerges as fully liberated spaces. So these micro territories are therefore at times productive sites, and they can generate newer identities and newer form of resistance and newer form of creativity. I think I have looked into all the parts and the aspects of the question. Thank you so
I,
much for the
I,
question.
I was
Thank you.
checking that too as well, Dr. Sood. I feel like yes, you
Yes,
have.
it is quite a long question. Thank you so
That
much.
was a great answer.
But
Thank you.
but these questions, they make you think. So I was a little cautious in answering all the aspects of the question. Thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Dr. Linder.
Okay, I'm going to start. It's a two-parter, so I'm just going to throw out my two questions. One is the first part's for Dr. Mahina, and the second is for Sananas. So, Dr. Mahina, I hope I'm saying that right. Um, there's this problem of avoidance when it comes to the trafficking of children and the abuse of children. One of the fundamental issues is society does not want to know. The reason that this predatory behavior is prevalent and continuous isn't because we don't know. We know, families know, neighbors know, people know, but they don't want to know. And so they look away, they avoid. So, how do we overcome that instinct at a societal level to look away from that which is repulsive or overwhelming? That's my question for you. And then for Sananaz, my question is actually around the embodiment, disembodiment axis of emotional connection in the digital space versus the human space. I'm curious, do you think that the more human beings spend time texting their friends instead of actually having dinner with them, that are is there something atrophying in terms of the human social apparatus and our ability fundamentally to continue to socialize? That is actually how, from an evolutionary perspective, human beings are designed. That is how we survived being eaten by tigers and so on. And yet we seem to be losing some of that capacity to socialize in an embodied way. The new generation will text you before they visit you. They'll look at your Facebook site, but they won't come to your house. So it seems to me something is being lost there. Can you talk a little bit about the atrophying of our skills? But let's, if you would, Dr. Mahima, if you would start off with this concept of avoiding the repulsive, the shocking, which then just lets it perpetuate.
Yeah, that's why I said the problem really is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, as you've said, it is known. People know. The families know. People in the community know. Survivors of sexual exploitation, they know. And they believe that there are possibilities. But then when you come to the structure of the society, there are powerful people who make decisions. Decisions in terms of the just distributive, of resources. Where do we send the money to solve what? And there are issues of understanding what really is the problem, and seeing themselves at they know it all. So they avoid, not because it is not known, they avoid knowing, and they avoid participating in solving the problem. But they have the power if they want to. And therefore, the reason I asked the question about the weaving from the previous presenters is the same thing, that we know that there are possibilities there. And if we were all in the same level of understanding and wanting to bring about social change, it could be done. But not all of us, we are on that level. We're not. And it's difficult because getting to know how to work collaboratively, as I've said, it's not that it's something that you can learn through the policies, or you can learn by going and work with policymakers and actually this works, so you have to give us money. It doesn't work that way. It's a long process of building up resilience, building up different values. And Georgie said it's a process of learning and relearning. So if there's a way of bringing about or creating opportunities for those with power, those who believe that they have it all, they have answers, they can provide the funds, to go through a process of relearning and be open towards wanting to solve such horrific issues as sexual health. Probably we can get to the goals that we want. but it's not an easy process. And therefore, from the literature, and I also think about the relevance and significance of using that complex theory so that we understand this complexity, as if you put it, that it's not because people don't know, they know it, but what can we do? And then possibilities of convincing those who are not part, they have power, but they're not part of that community who really wants to bring about solution. How can we entice them and be part of that group? In what ways? And probably uh, the approaches like participatory action research at that level of the decision makers, to make them go through a process of learning that actually knowledge is not about what is produced at the universities. Knowledge is experiential knowledge. Knowledge is part of who you are, and that other knowledge systems do work. They are open to learn about AI, and they want to incorporate artificial intelligence in policy making, but they don't want, they avoid some of the things that can be contributed by ordinary people. The structure is still the same, that there are some knowledge systems that are not valid, although it's written that all knowledge systems are valid, but the acceptance that knowledge system, we can't be informed by things that have not been tested in the university, but not been tested by using this kind of research. So it's a long process of trying to find opportunities of those with power to go through a process of relearning.
Thank you so much.
Now, may I answer your question?
Yes, please.
Okay, so that was just the key factor which we have discussed in our paper as well. I want to quote one statistic which I have come to cross, that we humans normally spend 80% of our awakening time in socialization. It's a study done in 2015. Kipo, I think I might say wrong. I don't know what's the pronunciation of this author. So along this, your concept with questions you have asked, the embodiment, disembodiment axis, we human are now moving more toward this embodied connection. We humans are built to socialize through eye contact, tone, shared physical presence, and what we call nowadays in positive psychology, the aura. Your aura. You definitely convey some energies. Sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's positive. Even the non-living things, your plants does understand your presence. The non-living things, it's a complete science. Definitely all of you already have heard about this. Your presence means a lot, but in today's digital world, these all things definitely is happening, like your affirmations, your validations, your networking experience online, so you don't know how to interact offline. So I mean, the through embodied interaction, so people text instead of meeting. They prefer to text because they want to avoid that uncomfortable interaction, because they don't have anything to talk about. They don't know how to speak. They only know about the language of emojis. They only talk about with that static emojis which they have saved in their favorites, in their chats. So when most of the time, for example, two friends meet, text all day. Like if I take one example of my student, which I have come across recently. So I don't want to quote the name of the student due to the confidentiality, but I'll share the story. They text all the day, but when they finally meet, the conversation feels awkward. It didn't happen once. It happens most of the time. Most of the time, they both are undergrad and they are studying in Pakistani university. What they did, they haven't even they don't have a skill how a person interact and behave in a certain way when they are meeting in person. So yes, digital connection keeps us in touch, but it can weaken the embodied abilities human evolved for real social life. So we somehow losing that connectivity with the passage of time. The generation like Gen Z and Gen Alpha. I'm not talking about, I'm a big advocate of Gen Z. So they are more, critical thinking. They are step ahead from millennials. We have seen the transition era from internet to AI and all that stuff, but I'm a big fan of Gen Z. But somehow these connectivities are shaping and reshaping and redesigning all the definitions. We cannot just like carry along the old definitions, even just 5 years old. So we need to come together with some more researches and more longitudinal studies. Yeah. Thank you. Hope I did
Okay.
answer your question.
Yes, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you.
Okay.
Thank you for those answers, and thank you, Dr. Linder. I'm going to move ahead and ask Dr. Demeke to ask his final question here before we wrap up.
So my next question is to Dr. Kariwo, and very interesting work, very much related with my day job that I've had for over 10 years. I was wondering if ever the issue of pre-migration and post-migration trauma come into your study. And sometimes there's a tendency, there's kind of two narratives. There's one that says that a lot of refugees and immigrants come with trauma, which is true, substantiated through studies, but also anecdotal evidence that I can attest to. But at the same time, there's also what they call the healthy immigrant effect. In other words, the idea that immigrants, when they first come to Canada, in Canadian context, are healthier than native-born Canadians, probably in physical terms, but that things get worse for them once they arrive in Canada. That the honeymoon period ends. There is issues with underemployment, issues that you talked about, being unable to access health services. All of these effects actually are trauma-inducing or trauma-creating that happen after people arrive. So I was just wondering if that dynamic between pre-immigration trauma and post-immigration trauma came into your studies.
Thank you so much, Dr. Demeke, for that question. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of research that has been undertaken. I was actually part of a team that worked on this research when I was in the Faculty of Nursing. There's Dr. Bason Morton in Ontario. He's a psychiatrist, and he has confirmed that when immigrants come to Canada, they're actually healthier mentally than the locals, the non-immigrants. But what happens is, as soon as they land here, they face so many barriers, as I mentioned in my study, and that health effect quickly disappears. So they end up worse than the non-Canadians. I mean, the non-immigrants. So yes, the research confirms that when they come here, they are healthier, but they quickly lose that. Some of the issues are around, the parents are holding menial jobs, 2 jobs, 3 jobs. They have no time for their young people, to mentor them or to assist them. When you come here, the education system is quite dependent on homework. you take work home, and parents must supervise you. Now the parents are not there, because they are holding 2 or 3 jobs. And then, so that's one of the lack of support in the when they're trying to pursue their education. That diminishes that the health effect factor. Then when they try to go into post-secondary, there are also several challenges. They don't have scholarships. Some of them, before they are citizens, they cannot even qualify for local funding. The parents have got to find that money for post-secondary education. The K to 12 is not a problem, because I think you don't have to pay fees over there unless you're going to a private school. So that adds on to the young people's problems. There's another study that's actually being conducted right now in Ottawa by the government, a social development department, to see the access to scholarships and what can be done for international students when they come here, or immigrants when they come here. Yes, so I think, to answer your question, that is really where the problem lies.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, and just right on time as we end our Q&A session. And that actually brings us to the end of day 2 of CityU's Nexus conference. I wanted to thank all of the presenters today for sharing your perspectives and insights into the connection between resilience and community resilience, feminist resilience, with the population of immigrant youth, and resilience in the digital world. And all of that together with the theme of resilience and social welfare. And thank you again to our global audience who are here with us. So please join us tomorrow for our 3rd and final day of the conference. We are, if you're in Pacific time, we start at 7 a.m. And if you're Mountain time, it's a more reasonable 8 a.m. But I should not complain, because I know some of you are, it's the middle of the night as you get started on this. So depending on where you are, I wanted to wish you a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Maraming salamat, which means